Alrighty, guys, let's see what game we can get today. So it's super early in the morning. I said I'm going to do E4 games. It's super early in the morning. I have very little motivation to actually do anything. So I'm going to try to see if maybe playing a game of chess is going to give me a little bit of oomph for the day, right? We'll see. Okay, so this does allow this kind of infiltration. I haven't done this line in a long time, and honestly, I don't know if it's the right move set to go for today. But you know what? Like I said, I have no motivation to do anything, so I'm going to try to kickstart the process. Notice the knight blocks off the queen, so this is the correct move order here. We're sacrificing here in order to make this. So now my opponent has to capture with the king. It doesn't have to, but it's probably going to capture with the king. Notice I'm forking both the queen and the rook. So I believe this is the actual fried liver attack. So I believe this is what is known as the fried liver. And then I have no idea how it proceeds from here. Notice I'm down a piece. Now I've got my piece back. My opponent cannot capture because I've got it defended here. And then I forget, like I said, I forget how we proceed from here. I'm not exactly sure what the move order is. The one thing I got to be careful of is putting my queen in front of my king so I don't trap something. Notice we want to defend against my opponent coming with a counter fork. Oops, I didn't mean to click confirm on that. I wanted to double check it. Yeah, so just as I was saying, there's a counter fork here. So the fried liver, everyone. What happens when you don't execute the fried liver correctly? Now I believe I'm going to swing my rook over here. I have a check here that I'd like to give. In fact, that might be checkmate. That might be checkmate here, actually, come to think of it. Now that the bishop's not on this diagonal, my opponent has no way. It becomes a smothered mate. So I believe my opponent has to defend against checkmate. And there we go. Well, that's all right, we're gonna put on the opening explorer because I think this is the fried liver, guys. I think we finally got a true fried liver attack. I'm guessing. I'm pretty sure that was what the fried liver looks like. So it starts off with the Italian game. And then we execute the knight attack. My opponent defends. I think this is the fried liver. It doesn't say. It doesn't say. I can't tell. Alrighty, so I paused, did some research, and then came right back because I wanted to look at this. No, we didn't quite get the fried liver. So let's look at the game as it played out. Right, so the Italian game, and real briefly, let's talk about the Italian game. So when you see the Italian game, right, we've seen the Ruy Lopez, we see the Italian game. I have said this every time I play the Italian, you mirror the bishop. So when you see the Italian, you mirror the bishop. And the reason for that is because it does not allow this knight attack. This is why. Now the bishop, in our games we play, I almost always go, I mirror the bishop exactly. But we have seen in recent games where I've talked more and more about e7. just parking the bishop here because it does kind of stop. It stops a couple of other infiltrations that could happen, but I've mentioned this a few times when this knight comes up and around, right? This knight comes over. I mean, the bishop comes over here to pin our knight, and then this knight rotates all the way up and over, and so there's double pressure on the f6 square. Oops, double pressure on the f6 square. So we've talked about that, where sometimes I feel like maybe stopping on D or e7 is as good, if not, with the games that I'm seeing lately, it's probably a little bit, could be a little bit better. But number one, by far, the number one move is bishop to c5. You mirror the bishop. So when you see the Italian game, you mirror the bishop. Whether you stop here, whether you stop here, or whether you stop here, mirror the bishop. That is our goal with the Italian. Because if we see what could happen is the two knights defense. That allows, see the queen now blocks, and so that allows our knight to kind of infiltrate the opponent's position. Now from here, my opponent played it correctly. The correct move response is pushing d5. It is a standard natural move. It helps control the center, but mostly what it does is it stops White's bishop from influencing the f7 square. So now here's where I screwed up. So I played this line where I capture with the bishop, but that's not the fried liver. So I did some research. The fried liver is actually capturing with the pawn. And the reason that's important, we'll see. So your opponent, just like in the game, the opponent captures with the knight. And then we go for our sacrifice, the fried liver sacrifice. Now, this is a fork, so your opponent really wants to do something. Now, they could move the queen, just get the queen up and away, give up the bishop, or give up the rook, eventually pick up the knight, because once the knight is here, it does become a little bit trapped trying to get out. So the knight does become, just like we saw in our game where the opponent's knight ended up on a1 for us, capturing our a-rook. Anyway, so this is the fried liver, and you can see here it says clearly fried liver attack. Capturing with that pawn is the difference. I captured with a bishop, but capturing with the pawn is the difference. Here's why. If we continue exactly like was in the board, my opponent captured with the king, and then I brought my queen out with check. Now, the reason this is important is because, well, we'll go back and we'll analyze our board state, where we had the pawn here. This knight is pinned. This knight cannot come to f4 to block. More importantly, this bishop maintains that influence all the way over to g8. Remember how we won our game, right? We won the game because we had our queen. From here, if our opponent moves to g8 like they did over the board, that is a forced checkmate. You can capture with either piece. Either one of these piece captures is a checkmate. So let's go with the worst possible scenario. I'm going to give up my queen. That is a check. There is nothing to block this check. There is nothing that can get over here and block this check except for this bishop or capturing the queen. If you capture with the bishop, we simply capture here. This is checkmate. The queen can no longer block, and there's nothing else left to block. So that becomes checkmate, just like in our game, except where we had the pawn there. Back up, back up. So the bishop is the only thing that can block, but all it's doing is, just like in our game, all it's doing is delaying the inevitable. So what about a queen trade? Same exact scenario. The only thing that can block now is the bishop, and it's still checkmate. So once the king moves to g8, game over. 100% game over. And even an idiot like me could figure that out, right? But the trick is that this bishop is what needs to be spying along this diagonal. So the king, in this case, would need to come up the board, which is the entire goal of the fried liver attack, is to force the king out of its safety zone and up the board. Now, the fried liver has been described as when both players make suboptimal moves. So the only way to execute the fried, that's why it's kind of rare, because both players have to make suboptimal moves. The fried liver is kind of a trick or a trap. And once you know how to play around it, then it kind of takes away from all of its strengths. So yes, the king is now out in the middle of the board, and that is an advantage that white has gained. But the game can continue as normal here. There is a few more things. So there's a double attack here. Now there's a triple attack here. And right now, black only has 2 defenders. So swinging this knight around adds a 3rd defender. From here, the game can continue just like normal. You'll notice there is a slight advantage. White does have a slight advantage. You can see in the analysis, depending on the move order you make, it could be in a winning position for white a little bit more than 50% of the time. You know, a couple thousand games played from these positions, and white does have a slight advantage. Now, between you and me, a 1 point or a 2 point evaluation swing one way or the other, as bad as I am at chess, that does not really mean too much to me, right? I can blow a 2 point lead like that, and I can win from a 3 point down or a 2 point down. You know, we've seen it both ways. So at our rating level, like we still drop pieces, right? A 3 point swing, we still drop whole pieces. So a 1 point swing, either not something that I'm going to worry that much about. Okay. Sorry guys, like I said, it's really early in the morning. I have no motivation. My eyes are still baggy from this morning. So I'm trying to stay pumped up, right? We got the fried liver almost. So close to the fried liver. We had it. Anyway, so that was the difference in the actual game than what was played. Is the only difference from what took place is I captured with the bishop and the fried liver is capturing with the pawn. The only difference. And it's a major difference because this influence is huge. So let's look at the game as it happened over the board. I capture with the bishop. My opponent swings the knight around. We go for our sort of fried liver attack. And then I bring the queen up. Now, here's the main difference. See this evaluation swing? It's crazy towards black. Crazy, because this bishop is not pinning the knight. The knight just comes here. White's attack is completely shut down. White has no more attack. There is, the best thing white could do is maybe throw a check along here. But now this knight is covering this crucial square. So the bishop can come here. The knight is covering the e6 square. So now there is no more attack. The king did not have to retreat away. The king can also defend along this e6 square. So we have completely lost our initiative from the white's perspective. So this works. Even this would work. So even this becomes shutting down. Again, because the king is defending the e6 square, this is not a threat anymore. Right? There is no more I can capture with check because the king is also helping defend. So there are way too many moves from this position for black to maintain the advantage. And if we look at how my opponent played it, I'm going to get rid of this. In this case, traveling back to g8 is perfectly fine. There are still some, I mean, you can look, even from this perspective, black has a massive advantage. So my capture, the knight comes down, threatens. Very, very smart move by my opponent. Notice I did not make the correct move order here, because again, I was way out of my knowledge, my comfort zone. I don't know the fried liver that well. I was close though, man, I was close. This, and you can see the advantage here is massive. Basically, this is an entire queen's worth. Oops, this is an entire queen's worth of advantage from this position, right? You can't capture either one of those because they're defended. The queen doesn't have a lot of squares, which means that if the queen moves off of the defense of this pawn, we saw exactly what happened. We saw the fork. I did make the correct KD1. And from here, my opponent has to keep an eye. Well, actually, not yet. No, so not yet. We don't have to keep an eye on this square. My opponent has this bishop they have to defend. Now the queen is involved in the attack. We've seen what happened when the queen can get to the second row, right? Those hungry pigs. The queen can be the hungriest of all, right? The queen can infiltrate down here, this undefended pawn. The engine says offering a queen trade is the best way to go. Notice the bishop being defended defends this checkmating square, right? The e6 square is defended. The king defends the f7 square now. So my threat of checkmate is completely eliminated with this bishop along this diagonal. Unfortunately, my opponent missed it and went ahead for the capture, which opened up. Now, even from here, my opponent has captured a whole rook. So let's look at the material on the board. Material on the board is my opponent has 2 pieces, I have 2 pieces. My opponent has 2 rooks, I only have 1. So at this point in time, I am down a full rook. And yet, white's advantage is only a 3. So there is something more to it going on here. If we count the pawns, you'll see 5 pawns versus 7. So white has 2 extra pawns. So there's something there. And this knight, just like we talked about from the fried liver attack, right? If you choose not to capture with the king, if you choose to move the queen and let the knight capture the rook, this knight is kind of trapped out of the game. So this knight is not going to be in the game for a while. So you could say, from this perspective, black has an extra rook, but is down a knight and 2 pawns. So you could say that because this knight is a little bit out of the game. Unfortunately, my opponent still could defend, right? Any one of these 3 squares that my opponent went to would have shut down the checkmate, right? If my opponent had gotten, even offering a queen trade. My opponent did go for this very extreme attacking line, which would normally be perfectly acceptable, except for the fact that there is nothing guarding this diagonal. So we got the checkmate. So I wanted to pause earlier, and you'll see I'm going to try to transition them so they're not too awkward of a transition. I was rambling in the other game because I thought I knew what the fried liver was, but this is my error. So when I was talking about it in the previous version where I mentioned, where I was rambling about the fried liver, I had it wrong. And I wanted to make sure I updated with correct information. So that transition is probably going to be a little funky because I don't have the talent to do that either. But fried liver, capture with the pawn. Because this bishop is hugely important, because when this capture, we want to pin that knight. So that knight cannot move. We go for the sacrifice. Now this knight is pinned. Now we can go for our attack with our queen. The king has to come up the board. If you are the victim of a fried liver, your king must go up the board. If you go back, the natural move of hiding your king, you've lost the game. There are a couple other moves here, I think. Yeah, that's acceptable, but there are still 2 attackers in this knight, so you're going to lose material. Right, so now this point in time, white is up. Oh, no, you're not. No, you're not. I'm sorry. You're not losing actual material. I'm sorry. Forgive me. You have lost 2 pawns to 1, so you're only down a pawn. Okay, so it's not the end of the world. Black has castling privileges. White has castling privileges. Black doesn't. So there's a little bit of an advantage, but not much. But again, you could see that when the fried liver falls apart, if black knows what they're doing and spots the fried liver, then it's really not that bad, right? It's not the end of the world. White has a slight advantage, has an extra pawn, but both parties still have a lot of development to do. So the game from here would proceed as normal. White probably wants to keep an eye on this pawn so that they don't get a fork, or just go ahead and castle really quick and eliminate the possibility, right? If this knight moves down here, we could simply castle. Yeah, we're losing a pawn. Oh, we're losing a rook either way. Right, because the rook is trapped. So let me undo that. Probably just get your bishop one of 2 places to defend that. So I would probably do something like this just because it defends and is defended at the same time. and then continue developing as normal, but this does allow your opponent to take one of your bishops. So, I don't know. From here, I don't know how the game would proceed, but fried liver, y'all. We did it. I don't know how we did it, but we did it. We got sort of a fried liver. We screwed it up by playing it wrong, but that's okay. We still got the trap. We sprung the trap somehow. Fun stuff. All right, guys. I hope you have a great morning. I hope you guys find motivation today, and I hope good things happen to you guys. Talk to you later.